Mute myself.
You're joining the 157th episode of the People's Court. It's Saturday, May 3rd, 2014. A historic week for the NBA as it saw its first lifetime ban and also 5 Game 7s in the first round. Court is now in session.
And now, here are your hosts, Chris, Lamont, and Adam.
Good morning, fellas.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Great morning. 3 Game 7.
I'm glad I can say that because, Adam, you're back to the show after a couple of weeks out. Quite a bit's been happening in your life.
Yes, it's been...
Over there. How's the transition to the new house, welcoming the new life, all that?
well.
How's that going?
Well, yeah, so in the last 2 weeks, I moved to a new house, which I'm broadcasting from live. Had a new baby. Congratulations, Eliza. She's 13 days old. She'll be 2 weeks tomorrow. And added a new person to our family. Another new person. My brother got married last weekend in Austin. So it's been a hectic couple of weeks. So I appreciate you guys giving me some time off so I could take care of that.
April was just good for your family, man.
Very good.
Mine.
Been a very good week.
Yeah.
Very good month, yes.
And as I mentioned, the week was a great week for the NBA. But before we get to that, I must remind you that if you want to contact the People's Court, you can do so by calling us at 424-ADJOURNED. That's 424-235-7633. It is up on People's Court FM, or check out on our blog, http://thepeoplescourt.fm. And as I mentioned, a historic week for the NBA. Finally, somewhat of a resolution to the Donald Sterling scandal. Let's get right into that, guys, because Adam, you didn't get a chance to share your thoughts on this issue since you were out last week. Me and Lamont talked about it at length, but I'm curious to know, what were your initial thoughts when you heard about what Donald Sterling said?
My initial response was, I can't believe he finally got caught on tape. And my next initial response was, finally they can do something about it. Because it's been an open secret in the NBA circles that Donald Sterling is a hardcore racist bigot. It's not a word you get to throw around very often. It was just shocking to me that somebody would say those things, and not only say those things, but say them and get recorded. And because I didn't know the details, if he was secretly recorded, I didn't know. In the beginning, we didn't know any of what was happening or why it was happening. Just that it did happen. And then my next initial response was, I don't think there's any way the owners will vote him out, because the owners just don't do that to each other. So it'll be interesting to see what transpires.
Yeah, Lamont and I were on the show last week, and I pretty much called for that vote. I said, it's time for him to go.
Yeah.
I was pretty adamant about that. Lamont also had some other thoughts regarding what the players should do. But now we know what the NBA has decided to do, and here's the rundown. Donald Sterling has received a lifetime ban from the NBA. He's not allowed in the Clippers facility. He's not allowed to participate in any organizational decisions. He's not allowed to attend any NBA functions or meetings. He's pretty much barred from the team and from the league. The NBA also fined, when I say the NBA, we should really say this was presented, of course, by Commissioner David Sterling. Commissioner Adam Silver. I was going to say David Stern, and then I said David Sterling. And, of course, I meant Adam Silver. I'm not the first person to make that mistake because I believe Shaq, Chuck, and EJ on Inside the NBA all made similar, what would you call those, mispronunciations?
Yeah.
Anyway, Commissioner Adam Silver levied a $2.5 million fine to Donald Sterling. Wow, I can't get. Lamont, you want to take over here? I can't get this right. You.
Okay, so
break it down, Lamont.
So Adam Silver gave Donald Sterling a lifetime ban, which means he's not allowed to attend any games. He's not allowed to be involved with any decisions regarding the Clippers. Sterling was also fined the maximum $2.5 million, which is the most that within the NBA's constitution and bylaws that Sterling could be fined. He was left. He was kicked off the NBA Board of Governors, which consists of all the owners of the team. So he can't vote on league decisions. So like in a year or two, their TV contracts are up. He can't. He has no say in that. The Board of Governors will be looking to vote him to force a sale of the Clippers as soon as next week. They need a two-thirds or three-quarters vote to.
They need 22 votes, whatever amount that represents.
Yeah.
They need 75%. You gotta have 75%.
So 22, 23 owners to vote him out, and it appears that vote will be unanimous. Like there's just no way that any owner. I don't see any owner voting him out or voting against forcing the forced sale. And this is the part where it gets really tricky.
All right, so before we get to the tricky part, Lamont, I want to stop right here and first of all get your thoughts and reactions to the lifetime ban, the fine, and then of course they haven't voted yet, but Adam Silver believes that he has the full support of the owners, and I believe all of the owners have come out and made a statement saying pretty much just that they're giving their full support to the commissioner in this regard. So before we move on to the other stuff, let's get initial reactions. Lamont, what do you think?
I was actually surprised. I expected the first three punishments: the fine, the suspension, the ban, and the removal of the Board of Governors. I was not expecting Adam Silver to come out and say that they were gonna vote to force him out of the league, force him to sell his team. I was not expecting that. Just because it's an unprecedented move, at least in this case. It would take a lot to go to go that route. Donald Sterling is Franklined up and going and lawyered up, and he fights everything. So I was surprised that Silver took it that far.
Adam, what do you think?
What took so long?
Exactly.
Are you kidding me? So Silver's press conference and the questions were fascinating because one I believe the Inside Edition reporter asked the same question. Like everybody's known he's been a racist. Why now? And I'm fascinated by the idea that it was this recording that tipped the iceberg. Essentially, the NBA continued to claim back when he settled out of court in many of his I don't know, I want to say racial discrimination trial, essentially evicting African Americans from his properties. He settled out of court, so the NBA couldn't do anything. And then Elgin Baylor lost his discrimination suit against Donald Sterling, so the NBA couldn't do anything. And I just think that's a load of crap because the NBA could have done their own investigation like they did their own investigation with this situation, and they could very easily have decided to do this before. And so what this points to me is that Silver is a very different commissioner than David Stern was. A lot of people that I have been reading have said that they think David Stern would have found a way to weasel out of this. And it may very well have been the case that, in fact, he did find a way to weasel out of it before when he just said, oh, we can't do anything, there was no conviction. And that was just a cop-out. So I was really, really surprised to see this, and happily surprised to see the strength that Adam Silver came down on Donald Sterling with. I don't know if he's going to get a 29-0 vote. It's possible that he does. But if he does, it sets a very, very, like Mark Cuban's been saying all along, it sets a very dangerous precedent for owners. Because, again, Rich DeVos, the owner of the Orlando Magic, is very anti-gay, has made many donations essentially trying to legally codify discrimination against homosexuals. That's a very unpopular opinion right now. And should he get caught on tape saying something unpopular, will he be voted out too? So I don't know that Adam Silver is going to get his 29-0 vote. I hope he does. I hope to see Donald Sterling go. He is an abhorrent human being, but he also just said something that's really unpopular, and the only reason he's getting kicked out is he's not getting kicked out because he's an abhorrent human being. He's been an abhorrent human being the entire time that he's owned the franchise. There are still abhorrent owners. There are still douchebags in the league. Rich DeVos is probably one of them, and my suspicion is, even though Dan Gilbert's probably a very liberal person, he's also a douchebag. Given the way that he posted his passive-aggressive letter against LeBron when LeBron left, I don't think he's a good person. So the reason that Donald Sterling is getting kicked out is not because he's a bad person. He's been a bad person for a very long time, and that never got him kicked out. He's getting kicked out because he's hurting the business. And we finally have a situation where it's really easy to take a moral stand. There's no murkiness now. He's on tape, and this is like the World War II of Donald Sterling, right? It's very easy to see who the good guys and the bad guys were in World War II. This isn't Vietnam where we're not sure. So the NBA now has a very solid ground to stand and preach morals. But it's not about the morality of the situation. It's about the bottom line. If the NBA and Adam Silver hadn't done anything, it would have hurt the bottom line. This is about finances. So let's not fall into the idea that this is about morality or doing the right thing. It's doing the right thing for the pocketbooks with the veneer of making a good stand. Now, look, I'm glad he's doing it, and I think it's a great move. But let's be honest about the reasons that it's actually happening.
Yeah, it's kind of like when a player takes a bad shot, and they're like, no, and then it goes in, and you're like, yes.
Yes.
You're happy about the result,
Yeah.
even though the action taken to get there wasn't necessarily the right action.
Yeah.
And it's such an interesting debate, right? Because everybody's happy about it. So I don't think anybody's upset about what's happening to David Sterling right now. I can't even say his goddamn name. I don't think I'm just gonna say his last name. If I stick to his last name, I think I'll be okay. I don't think anybody's upset about what's happening to Sterling right now. The fact that he may lose his team, the fact that he's been banned, all of that is, nobody disagrees with that. At least from what I've heard, and I certainly don't either. I was on here last week, really hoping that this is what would happen, right? So I got the result that I wanted, so I'm happy about that. Now, it doesn't mean that we can't analyze the reasons a little more deeply.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what Bomani Jones and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had to say about this subject, because we're kind of segued right into it here with what you've just brought up, Adam. Bomani Jones, if you don't know, is a personality. I don't know how else to describe him. He's not really an anchor, but he's a personality on ESPN, and had a lot of people, I guess, patting his back for his reaction to this whole situation. And here, let me pull out a key quote. Here's what Bomani Jones had to say, and this is quite long, so bear with me here. He says, when all these guys get up here and stand on their soapbox and wag their fingers and start talking about, oh, we won't tolerate racism, we won't tolerate what Donald Sterling says, what they're not tolerating about Donald Sterling is the fact that what he said was impolite and what he said was gauche. That's what their problem is. But when Donald Sterling is out here toying with people's lives on things that really matter, in matters of life and death, the media, the NBA, these sponsors, and all these people now who want to get patted on the back for what good people they are, didn't say a mumbling word. They can kiss my behind, every single one of them. Strong words from Bomani Jones right there. I don't disagree with his sentiment, and Adam, you eloquently put it. Sterling's a bad person. What's happening to him is well deserved. The problem here is that people are trying to, at least what Bomani is intimating, the problem is that they're standing on their soapbox now, well after the fact, just based on a few things that Sterling said and not based on what he's done.
Yeah.
My problem with what Bomani Jones is saying, though, is telling people to kiss his behind.
No.
Right? Because sure, David Stern didn't act on those previous incidences, but Adam Silver has. And the fact is, we're getting what we've wanted for years. And like I said, I'm not going to make quarrels with Adam Silver responding in the NBA's best interest, even though it may not be a moral response that he's done. This is clearly a PR move because Sterling is bad PR for the NBA. He's bad for the league right now. And acting swiftly and acting resolutely was the best thing the NBA could have done for all those involved. So I'm not upset at Adam Silver or these other sponsors or anybody like that for taking a stance in this matter. Who cares? The reason why they're doing it is not as important to me as the fact that they're doing it. What do you guys think?
See, I disagree strongly with that. And I'll tell you why. Yes, it's important that they're doing it, but the reason why they're doing it does matter. Because in my mind, they're essentially disguising a business maneuver as a moral crusade. The two happen to be walking hand in hand. But what this means is, and what they've shown, the NBA has shown in the past, is that they will only take action when they absolutely must, and they will only take action when it affects the bottom line. They're not taking action because he was a bad person. They're taking action because it's going to cost them money. So yeah, it is really good that they are doing that, and I don't disagree with it. But the way in which they did it was pretty disappointing. So I agree with Bomani Jones. I agree wholeheartedly with him in the sense that really because essentially they're co-opting the moral crusade for business purposes. That's what bothers me. They're not going to take a moral stand. Then nobody's going to call out Rich DeVos on the fact that he's donating money to, anti-gay organizations, because they don't do that. There's an unwritten rule in the NBA, which is owners don't go after each other until they break the code, right? And Rich DeVos is not breaking the code, so nobody's going to go after him. The NBA isn't a liberal organization. Liberal politics are very popular right now, and at least specifically in this around racism, which is awesome and should be, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. But in my opinion, they're riding the liberal wave in order to make a business decision, and that's what bothers me. So I think it does matter why they did it now.
Is it the NBA's responsibility, though? Because, what they've done, they haven't prevented Donald Sterling from continuing to be a douchebag and continuing to racially discriminate in the housing ventures that he owns, right? They've really just prevented him from owning an NBA team. That's what they're getting at. So is it the NBA's responsibility, though, to reach into those other realms that they may not have influence?
I'm not sure what you mean. Which other realms?
Well, like the things that we're upset about Sterling for being a racist, but that's all related to the real estate that he owns. Right.
I guess what I'm saying is they should just say that they'll never do this. It's hard to separate the two. But essentially, they're not kicking him out because he's a bad person. They're kicking him out because he's going to cost them money in the long run if they didn't kick him out. And they're not saying that, and that's what bothers me. If they were kicking people who were bad out, I don't think we would have any owners. I think most of the owners at one point or another are probably douchebags, because there's a quote that says, "Behind every great fortune is a great crime." There's probably 75% truth to that. So my suspicion is, again, here's another suspicion. I think that there are probably some owners out there who agree with him. There are probably still racist owners. I'm going to go ahead and say that at least one of the 29 owners is probably racist, because it's very ethically problematic to run a basketball team as a white man and be paying black players. Like, there's, as unpopular it is to say, there's clearly still a slave ownership mentality in the NBA, because Sterling is still an owner. I'm going to go so far as to say there may be other owners who harbor that, not in the same explicit way that he does, but certainly in an unconscious way. So, I don't know where I'm going with this. The fact is, we're not kicking people out because they're bad people. We're kicking people out because they made a faux pas. Just like Jay Smooth has said, just like Bomani Jones has said, he got caught. That's the only reason we're kicking him out. But the NBA is standing at is essentially pretending to stand up for rights. But they're not. If they were, they would kick them out a long time ago. So we're not standing up for rights. We're reacting to something that happened to us. That's what bothers me.
Well, like you said, you brought up before, it'll be interesting to see how Adam Silver's tenure as commissioner changes these things, because he's clearly taking a stance here, and it was a stance that David Stern was unwilling to take before.
Absolutely.
So, sure, the NBA didn't do anything, but I won't say that may not be possible in the future with Adam Silver now. I mean, he may do exactly what you're talking about. If anything comes out about Rich DeVos, I mean, he could be gone quick. Or if you know, if say another owner gets sued in much the same manner that Sterling got sued by Eldon Baylor, right?
Yeah.
Maybe Adam Silver responds to that lawsuit differently than David Stern did. And of course, Silver has to say that, well, we didn't act before because of this.
Yeah. Oh,
he wasn't the commissioner back then.
Yeah.
So he has to put it, kind of distance himself from what happened before. He wasn't the commissioner. He could only, he was obviously, I don't know if they called him deputy commissioner, but he still worked for the NBA, so he's privy to what happened back then and why those decisions were made or not made. But if another GM comes forward and sues their boss because of racial discrimination, Sterling may come out and say, or Silver may come out and say, hey, you gotta go. And I hope that's what he does. Hopefully he set a precedent here.
Well, and so that's an interesting question going forward as far as Silver's tenure goes, because my suspicion is that a lot of owners, Mark Cuban has been his comments about this entire thing have been very interesting, because he's talking about essentially a very slippery slope, one that Adam Silver has taken the NBA down head first. And again, very happy to see Sterling gone as an owner, but my suspicion is the rest of the owners are just a little bit nervous with a commissioner who's going to go after an owner so hard, because I think that the owners think of Adam Silver as their employee. So an employee who goes after their bosses with everything he's got is not generally an employee who sticks around very long. So as much as this is a great victory for the NBA, I don't know that, and basically what owner is not going to vote against Sterling now? It would be a
Well, I think I would be surprised if it's not. Like you said you'd be surprised if it was a unanimous vote. I'd be surprised if it's not.
No, and I think it will be, but I think that it's going to be because who doesn't vote? Like, it would be a huge faux pas for somebody to vote against it now, because, again, this is the World War II. We know exactly who the good guys and bad guys are. But my suspicion is there's going to be a lot of concern over a commissioner who goes after owners as hardcore as Silver is going after this owner, even though this is the exact right time to do it. So it'll be interesting to see if the other 29 owners aren't a little bit more skeptical and hold Silver at a distance in a way that they didn't with David Stern.
It certainly will be. So one of the things that Kevin Johnson said, and Kevin Johnson was the person that the NBA Players Union kind of tasked with leading them through this scandal. Since, of course, there isn't a Players Union president right now, but Johnson is the person who's supposed to be leading the search for a new president. So they asked him to kind of lead them through this scandal. And one of the things that he said in the press conference following Adam Silver's press conference was that Silver has now shown himself to be the players' commissioner and the owners' commissioner and the fans' commissioner, etc. But most importantly, the players' commissioner. And what you just said, well, maybe the owners feel that he's not their commissioner because he wouldn't take such strong action against an owner if he was their commissioner. The thing that maybe the cynic in me thought afterwards, Adam Silver has just garnished a ton of cred amongst the players by doing what he just did.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when it comes time for Adam Silver to negotiate for a higher age limit in the NBA, will that pass now because he's done this? And I would say that the age limit rule is, you argue, it's a form of institutional racism itself.
He started that negotiation All-Star Weekend, even though
he hasn't wavered at all. He's very much in favor of setting the age limit to 20 years old.
Like the greatest quote, the best quote he said that weekend was, "It's in the players' best interest to raise the age," because there's only 450 jobs There's only 450 players, roster spots available in the league, and when you have young guys coming in, somebody's got to go out. So it's in the longer you can, that extra year keeps an older guy a roster spot available for an older guy. Is it a form of institutional racism? I don't know. I have to really give that. I have to give that a lot of thought.
I think it is because what you just said. I think the problem that owners have, the problem that the league has had, is that they're putting money into the hand of an unproven commodity. Right? When young players come into the league, that's essentially what they're doing. So what they want to do is make sure that these young guys prove themselves a little bit more in college or wherever, but pretty much in college, so that they can evaluate them a little bit longer, so that they're not so uncertain about how they're spending their money. Well, guess what? Most of these guys are black. So, yeah, clearly they are not comfortable giving this money to young black men. Is that a form of institutional racism? I would wager that it is. So you have a rule here that maybe not on the surface, but if you look deep enough, can be a form of racism, and you have a commissioner who's so outwardly moved against a person who's racist. Don't these two things kind of compete against each other?
Absolutely. Absolutely, they do. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any clear-cut, definite thoughts. I mean, other than to reiterate that I'm against this age limit. I'm against this whole age limit thing, anyways.
Well, I have a couple of thoughts on that, if I can jump in. One is that I agree with you that because players in the NBA are predominantly black, that the age limit predominantly hurts young black men. But the flip side is also true. If the players in the NBA are predominantly black, then it also predominantly affects the older black men that get to stay in the league, right? So it's not as though we are keeping black players out to allow Hispanic players, right? Like in the MLB, a lot of, from my understanding, the African American community has been very vocal about the fact that the Major League Baseball has taken their attention away from the black community and moved it to the Central and South American community, essentially trading black players for Latino players. In this case, we're essentially keeping young black players out to keep older proven black players in. So, in my opinion, that to me does not, even though it predominantly affects young black males, because the beneficiaries of this there are two beneficiaries. One is older black proven veterans, and the GMs who then don't have to pay, who get to pay proven commodities instead of unproven commodities. So that to me does not strike me as racist. It strikes me as stupid because the NBA is essentially protecting itself with legislation to keep out, because they're keeping out the good players as well as the bad players, right? With the age limit, you're also keeping out people who would be appropriate in the league at 18, like LeBron. Even though they're a small percentage, you're depriving the league of good talent by doing that. And in fact, the rule is essentially a stopgap measure because they don't have a full-fledged minor league in place, and that's their own. They have no one to blame but themselves. What I do think is hypocritical of the league is that they are standing up and rallying against somebody who is obviously a racist, but they still have the white guy award in their annual GM survey. The player who does the most with the least. You can see my air quotes now. And the answer is always a guy with light-colored skin. Whether it's a European or American, it's always a white guy. So if the league wants to stand up and do something about racism, let's address the undercurrent of racism around, we're going to give an award to a white guy because we think that black people are just more athletic than other people are. And we also only talk about black players as athletic freaks, hustle players, and we never use the word intelligent around them because the high basketball IQ is only for the white players. So there's absolutely an undercurrent of racism in the NBA that's not being addressed while we're standing up and pretending that Donald Sterling is the only person who's ever done anything racist in the NBA. Yeah, absolutely. There's hypocritical. There's a lot of hypocrisy going on in the NBA, and it absolutely should be addressed.
There's one more angle I want to hit you guys with on this Donald Sterling thing before we move on to talking about what a fantastic Saturday and Sunday we're going to have in the NBA.
Woo!
Reports have come out that Donald Sterling is battling cancer, and he's been fighting cancer for a couple of years. And the NBA is actually really surprised he hasn't kicked the can already. Does his fight essentially for his life change the way you feel about this entire situation at all? I'm going to take your silence as no.
No, absolutely not. I thought it very interesting that within 2 days of Silver's press conference, news of Sterling's cancer gets published. I also thought it very interesting that they reminded him that the information about his son passing away was re-released. His son passed away last.
Yeah.
Now it's last year, maybe the year before, and it is always tragic when a parent loses a child, no matter how despicable that parent is as a person. Basically, they're giving this news out about Sterling to try to get the sympathy. They're prepping for the sympathy. For sympathy when he takes the league to court. That's what they're doing. So no, it doesn't change. It doesn't change my feelings about Sterling or what the league is doing. I'm still happy that he's out of the league. I agree with Bomani Jones that everybody needs to get off their moral high ground, because if you're an NBA fan, because every NBA fan has put money into this man's pockets. That goes double if you're an NBA fan in LA, triple if you've gone to Clippers games at Staples Center or the Sports Arena before that, quadruple if you're a Clippers fan and you have Clippers jerseys and all that stuff. No, you put money. We've all put money into this man's pockets. Most of us know that he's been a despicable, horrible human being, and he finally gets punished because the Clippers are finally a marquee team, and he's going to cost the league money. And we are in this punished people. We are now evolved into a society in this country to punish people because they hurt our feelings, and not for like what Adam has said and what Bomani Jones has said, not for what they actually did. So, cancer. Saw that he reportedly had cancer. Wasn't moved by that at all.
Yeah, that's all smoke and mirrors and public relations, rhetoric. Like you said, trying to deflect some of the, soften the blow a little bit by releasing this information. Just kind of what they did last week when they tried to discredit the woman that potentially recorded these conversations, right? Like they're trying to throw shade on her. Just again trying to deflect the real target of everything, which is Donald Sterling.
Well, but I think we can hold both. We can hold both simultaneously. I have compassion for a human being fighting for his life against cancer. I have slightly less compassion for a billionaire doing it. He's going to get the best medical care that someone can provide. But still, it's not good in my opinion. It's not a good thing that he's fighting for his life. And he's a despicable human being, and he needs to be held accountable for that despicableness. So I also want to touch on what Lamont said, because it was kind of a new thought for me, in that I have paid Donald Sterling a fraction of the amount. As a League Pass subscriber, he gets part of that money. And I hadn't really thought about it that way. And was kind of convicting to me. Like, oh, I've actually given him money. That's not something that I'm really proud of. And yet, at the same time, the three of us, more than most NBA fans, I think, are engaged in critiquing something and at least talking about the problems while appreciating the beauty. And so the thought to me was, can something beautiful come out of something ugly? And clearly, Donald Sterling has contributed to the NBA as little as possible for a long time, and his ugliness has produced something beautiful. The game of basketball is beautiful, more beautiful than it's ever been before, as we're going to jump into talking about these 5 Game 7s that we have. Clearly, there is beauty here that is unchallenged in the history of basketball. We're witnessing historic stuff. Even though he is a bad person. I don't think there's any way of getting around that. And I think it's our responsibility as fans to continue to call that out, continue to talk about that, and not let it be a secret, whether it's on a podcast like this, whether it's on a message board somewhere. Continue to talk about the ugly things that are a piece of the beautiful game that we love.
Yeah, absolutely. And I said that was the last thing we were going to talk about, but in regards to this Sterling situation. But there's one more thing that I want to bring up. And we know that the NBA Board of Governors plans to vote as soon as next week. One of the things that I don't want to get lost is that, sure, they've moved to ban Sterling. Sure, they've fined him and they've taken this really stark action against Sterling. But the battle, if there is one, really isn't over until he loses his team. So, at least this particular battle. Obviously, there are other things that you can fight Sterling on, and those battles haven't even begun to finish yet. But this particular battle won't finish until Sterling loses his team. And I went so far as to say that if this action wasn't taken, that I wasn't going to watch the NBA anymore. And I'm still willing to take that stance. If they haven't voted and began the process of removing Sterling as an owner by the NBA Finals, which begin in mid-June, right? I'll give them a month. I'll give them that time because I know the process can be, it's all about lawyers and stuff at this point. I know the process can take a while, so I'll give them a month.
Yeah, they need to get all their...
if they haven't started that process of removing him, whatever that process looks like, by the NBA Finals, I'm not going to watch the Finals. And I'm not going to watch another game of NBA basketball. I'm not going to even talk about it. You guys can continue the show, but I won't even talk about the NBA until he's out. And I think the players, I did a complete 180 on this last week. I felt that the players shouldn't boycott, but now I'm completely on the opposite. I think the players need to stand up for themselves in this situation, not just Clipper players, but all players in the NBA. And if they feel also that action hasn't been taken quickly enough by the NBA Finals, I don't think the players should play in the Finals either. Whichever 2 teams happen to be represented by that time, they should sit out.
So, wow, that's a really powerful statement. So my question to you is why now? Because here's my question: what if Stiviano hadn't taped or hadn't revealed the tapes that he said? That wouldn't make Sterling any less racist. That wouldn't make him any less a despicable human being. He was despicable before the tapes, and he's just as despicable now. So why now? Just because the tapes were released? Just because you feel that the NBA has a moral obligation to act on those tapes? To me, it's strange that you would choose this moment to boycott when Donald Sterling has been possibly even more a douchebag earlier in the league, especially the way he treated Elgin Baylor. So I'm intrigued why you would boycott now specifically.
I think I finally understand the responsibility that I have, that I feel I have anyway, and that I feel that the players should have. Before, I didn't quite understand that. It went over my head, and last week, Lamont, you heard me say I didn't think the players should boycott. I didn't think it was their responsibility. Now I feel, okay, yeah, sure, it may have taken this incident to make me realize that, but I don't want to support a league that allows this to happen. And sure, they allowed it to happen before, and it just never occurred to me. It never occurred to me that, hey, I can do more about this than I thought. And obviously, what I do doesn't move the needle very much, right? Because I'm nobody. But just like you said, one of those moral things. Lamont, you mentioned this while we were talking about on the pre-show. I don't patronize Chick-fil-A anymore because that organization has a stance on gay marriage that I disagree with. So I stopped going there. It's just little things like that. Hey, if somebody stands for something that I don't agree with, then I don't need to support that organization anymore. And if the NBA, this is something that I started to feel strongly about after our show last Saturday, obviously, then I don't need to support the NBA anymore if they don't do something that I agree with. And they've started that path, clearly, but obviously I want them to expedite the process. So that's where I stand. And I'm not going to allow people like Bomani Jones, and even if you agree with Bomani Jones, Adam, even yourself, to say to me that I'm not responding to this at the right moment. It's the right moment for me.
Yeah.
So this is the stance that I'm taking now.
Absolutely. So I apologize if that's what you took from my comment. My comment was not that you're not responding to it. My interest was just to know why now. That was all.
But that's what the Bomani Jones comments intimate though. Like, and even Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, we didn't talk specifically about that, but that's what they're getting at. Like, why is the outrage now? And I think it's okay to ask that question.
Yeah.
And it's fine. Like I said, I think it's okay to ask that question, but I think it's more important to recognize that, okay, now action is taking place, and as long as that action is just, then let's get behind it.
Cool. So I have two things. One is that I would be sad to see someone who is as passionate about social justice as you are leave the NBA family, because as little as it's going to do for you to leave, right? You don't move the needle very much if you leave as a fan. It would be, to me, and this is my stance, I would rather see you stay engaged and continue to critique, because in my opinion, I know you love basketball, I love basketball, we love watching it played, and again, it's a beautiful game. And I think we will do more good in the long run by continuing to stay fans and critique both the league, its players, and the owners and the play that's happening than we would by walking away and just choosing to opt out. So that's my stance, is that if I'm going to
I can still critique the league from a social standpoint, right? Because it's not like I have to watch the games to understand what's going on in the league as a whole, right? But in terms of getting my entertainment from the NBA, maybe I'll just go watch high school basketball instead.
And I think that's a great use of your time. Absolutely. So my second question is, will you continue to stay if the NBA then doesn't go after Rich DeVos, who is probably a bigot? We don't know because we haven't heard his quotes, but he is giving money to groups that are continually trying to essentially outlaw homosexuality. Now, you've already said you don't go to Chick-fil-A. So does that mean that you just don't watch Magic games, or does that mean that you have to leave the NBA entirely? Because, again,
and that's something I have to evaluate, and that's a fantastic question, Adam. I'm not aware of what Rich DeVos does. You're bringing up is the first that I've heard of it. So it's something that I need to investigate, and if Rich DeVos is in a similar boat as Chick-fil-A, then obviously I would start first with no more Orlando Magic. Not watching their games, right? Not watching their games. Obviously, I can't go to their games. They're in Orlando. I wouldn't go to their games anyway. So starting there, and then if I feel that the NBA needs, like we talked about this, if the NBA needs to take deeper action and they don't, then of course I would have to figure out if the NBA is ignoring the situation.
Yeah.
And if they are, and if they're not reacting because, like you said, there hasn't been that smoking gun yet, well then, yeah. Obviously that's something that I would consider.
Okay.
But I don't know enough about the situation to give you an answer.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, cool. I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate your honesty and your dedication to your cause. I really admire that.
We'll see what happens. Hopefully I don't have to stop watching the league. Because I really do like it. But I think the way that this is going and the sentiment that the other owners have shown is that they're going to do what they can to get Sterling out as fast as possible. So I'm I'm going to hope that that's what happens, and if it doesn't, then well,
It's just a matter. It's just a matter of making sure that their legal I's are dotted and legal T's are crossed. That's
if Sterling fights it and it prolongs the battle, well then that's something that they have to go through. But if they don't even start the process to get there, that's another problem. You know what I mean? So we've talked quite a bit here about Donald Sterling. I don't know if we're going to have any time to talk about these Game 7s other than to say that it's going to be fantastic. What do you guys expect to see? Real quick, we'll get into it quickly and then move on to our performances and embarrassments, which I think are pretty obvious at this point. But wow. First, it wasn't enough that on Thursday, all three teams that were fighting for their playoff lives won and extended the series to Game 7 to give us 3 Game 7s today. That wasn't enough. On Friday, last night, 2 of the 3 teams fighting for their playoff lives managed to do the same thing to give us 2 more Game 7s. And in the last game, we nearly had another Game 7 force if it weren't for the heroics of Damian Lillard winning that series on a walk-off three-pointer with 0.9 seconds left. These playoffs are amazing.
I'm done with trying to make predictions. I really don't know who's going to win this weekend. I suspect Indiana and Brooklyn will, but I'm not even so sure. I'm not even so sure about. I do know that Zach Randolph is suspended for his Game 7, which is today. Tony Allen had a migraine headache, so he's questionable.
He'll play through that.
He'll probably play that, and then Mike Conley has a strained hamstring that he's going to play. Which all three of those things tilt the game in Oklahoma City's favor. So you can say that they're probably going to win, but I don't know.
The only prediction that I'm willing to make regarding the games today and tomorrow, I'm pretty certain there's going to be at least one overtime game. That's the only prediction that I'm willing to make.
And like 75.
And I made that prediction on Thursday night before we found out there was going to be 2 more Game 7s on Sunday. That one of the games today was going to go into overtime. It has to, right? Like that's just the way things are going. Like these playoffs are amazing. Either that or somebody's going to hit a walk-off like Dame Lillard did last night. Something's going to go into overtime, though. These things have been series have just been way too competitive. How many overtime games in the Oklahoma City Memphis series? 4. 3 overtime games in the series that ended last night, Houston and Portland, right? There were 3 overtime games in that series. Every team that goes up by 15 or 20 points, guess what? That lead isn't safe because there's going to be a comeback, and at the end of the game, it's going to come down to a couple possessions anyway.
At the end of the game,
don't think you got it easy if you get up by 15 or 20.
Every game features at least 2 4-point plays.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just amazing basketball being played right now, and I think the biggest fans of all this are probably the Miami Heat because they get to sit back and rest.
I'm so frustrated. Cannot wait for the second round to start. Come on. If Toronto would just be in Game 7, I'd be very happy.
Yeah, but I mean, aren't you happy that Dwayne Wade gets to chill and rest his knees and whatever else ails him?
Yes, I'm very glad he gets to rest, but I am not looking forward to the inevitable. Are they going to be rusty when they come back from Game 1 articles? I hate those. Yes, they're going to be rusty. Of course they're going to be rusty. Who cares? They got rest. That's what matters.
Yeah, the whole rest versus rusty argument is going to apply to them. And,
yeah. So anyway, yeah, we don't. The only one we know is clearly Oklahoma. Oklahoma's going to win because without Zebo, Memphis can't do anything. I'm sorry, it's over. Once Zebo got suspended, Zach Randolph got suspended, Oklahoma's going to win now, unless Russell Westbrook goes completely insane, which is not outside the realm of possibility. I got a 25% chance of that. of him just completely shooting them out of the game. Oklahoma City has that. But the rest of the games, I don't know. It's all up in the air. Dallas has been incredibly well coached and are doing an amazing job of really disrupting the Spurs offense. And Dallas is playing out of his head.
Monte was great last night. Everyone's gonna talk about what Dame did, of course, and that what Dame did last night, and naturally so. But everybody, the game before that, Dallas was down between 8 and 12 points in the second half, and that comeback was led and sparked by Monte Ellis.
And it was led by Monte Ellis not shooting mid-range jumpers. He kept going to the hole, and that's what he has to do. And he did that last night, and that's one of the reasons that they came back.
Yeah, there's a little stat about Monte that's been kind of going around this entire season, is that he leads the NBA in points off drives to the basket. So, I mean, he's been aggressive all season going to the hole and continues to do so in that series. I will say this about Z-Bo's suspension. I thought the same thing when Nene got suspended, that the Wizards wouldn't be able to win that game, because he had been driving the bus pretty much for them the entire series. Nene got suspended, and the Wizards still closed out that game and closed out that series without Nene, because they got incredible performance from Trevor Ariza. So I'm not ruling anything out of these playoffs. I mean, Courtney Lee might come up with a monster game for the Grizzlies and keep their hopes alive.
As big a problem, I think, for this game or for that series is Tony Allen and how well he's able to play through that migraine, because he's played great D for most of the series against Durant. Like Game 6, this Game 6 was when you saw it was really like the best game that Oklahoma City had played in this series. But if he's not available or can't play solidly, then obviously that lessens their chances to win. If Durant goes off and has 45 points, then they probably don't.
All of that coming up in a few hours.
All of that is coming up in 2 hours.
So
3 hours. 2 hours.
Let's move on to performances and embarrassments of the week. Lamont, I'll start with you. Your embarrassment of the week?
I'm going to be contrarian and not go with Adam Silver. That's fine. My performance goes to Darius at 4 in blue and gold, who tweeted Damian Lillard's game-winning shot in advance of his shot. I think the tweet said Dame, all in capital letters with an exclamation point. He said something about just tweeting it early. 2 minutes later, 20 seconds later, Dame makes the shot. So that was a great bit of clairvoyance on his part.
All right, we're just going to ignore the fact that I asked for embarrassment. He gave me performance. So, Adam, your performance of the week.
Oh, oops.
He's being very contrarian today.
Yes, contrarian.
Did you say
continuing with performances? You don't know what?
Why you got to keep telling Lamont what to do? He gets to do whatever he wants.
That's right. Who's your performance of the week, Adam?
Well, it's hard not to give it to Adam Silver. I mean, wow. It has to be Adam Silver. All credit to Dame Lillard with his shot. And I will say this. After his Rookie of the Year season last year with Portland, I really thought Dame Lillard had hit his ceiling, and he has proved me wrong. So congrats to him. I think he is a legit star in this league. I don't know if he's superstar, but he's a legit star in this league, and he's doing incredibly well. But it's hard to win a game-winning shot, even that breaks a 14-year playoffs winning drought, is not as powerful as a historical civil rights movement in the NBA. So Adam Silver gets my performance of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with everything you just said right there. Damian Lillard, his legend has been cemented. Every single time now that Portland is in a situation where they need a basket at the end of a game, everyone's going to say, oh, Dame Lillard is such a clutch player. He's got to get the ball right now. Nobody's saying that the rest of his career, even though it's only the second year of his career, because of this shot. And when you're able to make big shots like this in the playoffs, you get that clutch title, and he's going to go down as one of those players. But Adam Silver, definitely my performance of the week as well. Embarrassment of the week? Lamont, did you want to be contrarian? You can be contrarian first.
I guess I should mention myself for not following instructions. My embarrassment of the week is gonna go to, I guess, anybody who's complaining about the Zach Randolph suspension. He punched a man in the face. That's a clear violation of the rule. So he deserves it. The suspension is deserving. And we didn't really talk about this, but Paul George could have been suspended and they didn't. So I guess my embarrassment of the week is my real embarrassment of the week is the NBA for following the letter of the rules strictly in one case and not in the other.
Okay, let's talk about that Paul George situation. So what is the rule?
The rule is during these altercations, if a player leaves the bench, no players are allowed to leave the bench area. He took 2 steps onto the court before he was held back. Who was it? George Hill and
Mike Scott.
Mike Scott got into it, and Paul George was on the bench. He took 2 steps onto the court. That's violating. I'm pretty sure that's breaking the rule, and they decided not to suspend him because he didn't make any sudden movements. He didn't rush out onto the court. He was restrained very quickly. But I'm pretty sure that breaks the rules.
See, I think there's a line of interpretation there. See, the rule doesn't state if you step onto the court, you'll be suspended. The rule states if you leave the vicinity of the bench, or whatever they say, the area of the bench. And when everybody's standing up on the bench, like, everybody's feet are on the edge of the court. Like, at the end of games, when players are hyped and the bench is standing up, those guys are pretty much on the court too. So him taking a step and a half or 2 steps onto the court, I don't think he left the vicinity of the bench. When I saw it, I was like, really, people are... Just because you took a step onto the court doesn't necessarily mean you left the vicinity of the bench. The benches are so close to the court now. So I thought that him not getting suspended was fine. Rasul Butler, on the other hand, ventured out beyond the 3-point line. He was way out there. He could have got suspended. They didn't suspend him. I think he should have been suspended.
So do we know the exact wording of the rule? Because that's pretty important.
No, we don't. We'll just go on past it. We'll blow past it.
No, we don't. Somewhere on my computer. Somewhere I've got the rule book on my computer, but I don't want to go through all 300 pages to find it.
Yeah. So, Adam, who is your embarrassment of the week?
Donald Sterling. It's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
This is Tim's suggestion, and I'm going to go with it. Donald Sterling gets a lifetime embarrassment of a lifetime.
No.
So I think it goes without saying. Every week we could put Donald Sterling here as the embarrassment of the week. We'll just grant him a lifetime designation. Embarrassment of the week. Embarrassment of the lifetime, yeah. Because clearly he's embarrassing. Anything else that you guys want to say before we get out of here?
Good.
I had something else to say, but I completely forgot what it was.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot that we didn't get to because we spent so much time on the Donald Sterling thing, but we'll be back next week. Mike D'Antoni resigned his post as coach of the Lakers. We'll talk a bit about that next week.
Oh, now I remember. Not to interrupt you off, but do either of the two of you still watch these games, rooting for guys on your fantasy team?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, when Monte Ellis was going off in the fourth quarter last night. Yeah, I was like, go Monte, yeah.
Okay, just making sure it wasn't me.
Oh, and we will have those trophies. Lamont has them in his possession, but next week we'll have the trophies for our fantasy champion and loser. There they are right there, but we'll be on full display next week. We'll talk about this idea of whether or not referees blowing the whistle late is okay. And we'll talk about, of course, what will be round 2 of the playoffs. So we got a lot to talk about next week as well. Once again, you can hit us up on Twitter, @PeoplesCourtFM. You can call us, 424-ADJOURN, 424-235-7633. You can always find previous episodes of the podcast and, well, not any blog posts lately, but definitely previous episodes of the podcast on our website, http://thepeoplescourt.fm. Our next episode will be Saturday, May 10th, at 11:30 a.m. Pacific time, as always. Episode 157 of The People's Court was brought to you by Hilton Armstrong, the first and only person to wear number 57 and also be a victim of Hack Hilton. Court is adjourned.